Welcome to another episode of Rotten Taste, where we kind of take a look at movies from the past that don't do well on Rotten Tomatoes and tell you what we think of them. And today, in honor of the late, great Chuck Norris, Soto, we took a look at the 1992 film Sidekicks.
We sure did.
Which has a 26% score on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow.
26%.
I didn't look at Rotten Tomatoes. That's actually quite surprising. Okay. Yep. 26. Wow. That seems low.
It's also got a 49% audience score too. So even that wasn't high. But yeah, this came out in 92. Also stars stars Jonathan Brandis. I guess anything Chuck Norris, and he stars no matter how much he's in the movie. But Soto, yeah, I know we want to do this because, Chuck Norris just recently passed. But this is also a movie that's been on our radar for a while, and we just haven't got around to it. This is a movie you suggested, and I was even like, oh, yeah, I remember watching that all the time because, like we always said, it was always on. But why did you feel like this is a movie, even before, obviously, what happened to Chuck Norris? Why did you feel like this is a movie we had to do?
Well, it's basically everything that we do in this whole Rotten Taste thing. It's a movie. I think that you pointed out perfectly. It's always on. And it tends to be, if I've learned anything from these episodes, the movies that we watch that are really bad are the ones that are always on, right? Because they get distribution. And so I saw it a ton when I was a kid. And in 1992, I think I was, maybe 11 years old, I want to say. And, karate was big in the 80s, which we'll get into. And it was just always a movie that you just always caught in the middle of, and it was always on at whatever station it was. And so, big fan of Chuck Norris, obviously in the 80s. We'll discuss that, whether he was big as Sylvester Stallone. But yeah, this movie was on. I saw it a million times, but I haven't seen it since.
Same. It's been a while. And I knew this movie had a decent supporting cast, and I was surprised. I forgot a lot of who was in this. Like, I remember Joe Piscopo being the evil karate instructor, and I always remember that. I'm like, Saturday Night Live comedian, all right, whatever. But obviously for this film it works. But it also has Beau Bridges as the single father, which we talked about the wizard and stuff like that.
No.
This is like his typecast kind of role. I forgot he was in it. I forgot Danica McKellar. I was a huge fan of the Wonder Years, and she was in this. And even Richard Mole, Night Court, loved him. The quick premise of the story, Soto, Jonathan Brandis, just gets bullied at school, and in a way to cope and a way to escape, he daydreams adventures with Chuck Norris, and they become I wouldn't say they become too realistic. He just loses himself in them. And yes, obviously the bullies all know karate, and through story reasons, they meet at a tournament at the end. So yeah, there's going to be some similarities between this and Karate Kid, but kind of a different feel.
Here's the thing. And I enjoyed this movie, and we'll talk about this, we'll break it down, but I actually thought this movie was pretty damn charming up until the karate tournament. I found Jonathan Brandis' character to be a little bit more charming than Daniel-san, which Daniel in the first Karate Kid is so fucking annoying. I like obviously Mr. Miyagi, and Daniel eventually works everything out, but I found Jonathan Brandis to be a lot more interesting in this movie. I just thought that, as far as my lead-off thought on this movie, that everything was perfectly fine. I understand. I was enjoying the vibe of this movie until it tried to become the Karate Kid and the Karate Championship. That's where the movie lost me. So we'll go back. Obviously, I know you're going to summarize some of the big stuff, but it really just got, once it got into the fucking Karate Championship, I just was like, this is not fun to watch.
So I agree with you. And I think I have an explanation why, at least for me personally. So yes, because you're right. With Daniel LaRusso on Karate Kid, he was more the kid he got bullied. He has definitely a different, characteristic than Barry, Jonathan Brandis. But Barry gets bullied, but he can't really, he's very much more in a shell than what Daniel LaRusso is. But here's the thing, and I think I'm not going to obviously speak on your behalf, but this is more my behalf. I think the reason why a lot of this first half up until the tournament works is Barry is more relatable to teens and how they go through high school, especially again, me, I was bullied. I am a daydreamer. I do that.
Me
Sometimes
too.
now I do not go to the extent that Barry does in this film where I'm talking out loud and just
Where you
like,
disassociate completely from reality. Yeah.
correct. There's a fine line. But
I
I
need
think you're right.
substances for that.
Jonathan Brandis was everywhere in the 90s. He was likable. And I think that helped in
Yes.
this character. And a lot of kids who are in this situation can see themselves to a certain point. And you are right. The way the karate tournament, which isn't like the tournament Karate Kid, it was just like more of an exhibition, a
Oh,
show off of certain skills, which is what a lot of karate tournaments actually is. That is not a tournament base. It just seemed like a reason to get Chuck Norris in the story. His character, because in a weird way,
yeah.
yes, there's the Chuck Norris that Barry dreams about, and they're making fun of all
Yes.
like the 80s action films, and it's just like, all right, we do that, our heroes,
Yeah.
you want to have their adventures, or you go on an adventure, and stuff like that. But they needed to bring Chuck Norris, the character, into it, and yeah, for story reasons, he has to join their team. So you're right. I think this has more
Yeah. That was
heart.
fucking dumb.
It was, and I think that's where maybe a lot of people lost it because there was a lot there, but they got around to it in a very messy way. So going to the
That's a
dad,
great way.
because
Yep.
they did. The dad was single, Bo Bridges, and that's fine. There is a
Yeah.
lot of single parent households and stuff like that.
Like Barry's character is dealing with like the grief of his mother passing away, and then also like his weird relationship with his father. And again, that inherently is very messy. And I thought that was done. That had potential to be done in an interesting way, right? And
Mhm.
there was a weird, I don't know, like there was a romantic relationship between Barry's dad and his teacher and
Yeah.
stuff, and so that was handled clumsily. But like the core of it, it was a story about a kid that was really trying to deal with complex emotions. Mom passes away, doesn't have like a very like open relationship with his father. There's not a lot of trust there, and then he's also in high school, and then he's also got Chuck Norris. So from a foundational standpoint, I felt like there was a lot there. And then, again, like I mentioned earlier, then it got pigeonholed into this karate championship.
The weird part to me and is Mr. Lee. She brings her uncle
Hmm.
to stateside to help with Barry, and that just seemed weird. Like I don't know. It's just like, oh yeah, I invited my uncle to teach him karate. Like, was there no discussion with the dad before? And
No,
like, she's just like, nope, we need him here. We need this more comical Mr. Miyagi character.
well, he's
Uh,
gonna run the restaurant, right? Like, is that was like the whole point? Again,
yeah,
the frying wok, is that what they
the frying.
had?
Oh yeah.
Oh, the frying dragon. Yes, thank you.
Well,
Yeah, and he was gonna run the restaurant, and then it so happened that her father, who is Mako, by the way, who I love in Conan and the Barbarian, um, and she was bringing him on to kind of because he was also a poet and a dreamer, and she was gonna match him up with Barry, and he was also a dreamer as well. Um, but yeah, you're right. Like that relationship between Barry's dad and the teacher, it really didn't go anywhere.
and it should have. For movie reasons and real life reasons, it should
For
have. But
movie
in
reasons.
movie reasons, they
Yeah.
should have. But it's
Right.
also here's the thing. Going back to the Karate Kid with Mr. Lee and Barry, yeah,
Mhm.
there's the similarities that they introduced, but I don't feel that relationship, the student teacher relationship, and the closeness was built upon as
No.
well as the Mr. Miyagi Daniel LaRusso. Like
Nope.
there is something more organic about the Karate Kid pairing
Oh yeah. Oh my
because
god,
you had
absolutely.
time and they worked on it and they worked more. Mr. Miyagi's backstory, and yes, Daniel LaRusso, though annoying as he was, so and it worked. So we had more training montages. Here it's just like, you start walking to school, you start running to school after, a week or two. And it didn't really feel like he was training all that much. Basic conditioning, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
So I think again they had a lot there. They just didn't execute it properly for movie reasons.
I was expecting this movie to suck a lot more than it did. I that's basically how I went into it. And for 2/3 of this movie, I was just like, this isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And then the third act happened.
First of all, before we get to the third act, all these guns and explosions going off, and then there's Jonathan Brandis as Barry and Chuck Norris like, I have a shot of milk. And I don't know why,
Oh,
out of everything that got me, it is the dumbest thing, but it's just like everything's going on, explosion. Because, like, yeah, he's 14. He doesn't know what a shot of anything is. So it was a wholesome moment.
14. Yeah, 14-year-old, I guess, wouldn't know. I liked that relationship between Chuck Norris and Barry as well in his mind. I thought Chuck Norris was actually
Likeable.
pretend Chuck Norris was actually very likable. And I like the whole vibe. I especially like the scene where, Barry's trying to climb the rope and Chuck Norris is kind of, encouraging him and everything. And he's in front of Richard Mole and everybody, and everyone thinks he's whatever. And, Chuck Norris is like, oh no, just focus on me. And like, just do this and you can do it. Like, that was like really cool. And I like that vibe a lot. I imaginary Chuck Norris in this movie was better than real Chuck Norris, if that makes
movie.
sense.
Yeah, and I just have to say, Soto, you're an element. Did you have to ever do that rope climb?
No, I never did.
I could never do it. I was scared shitless. Kids did it. Because I know I'm a little. We actually had to do that. And when you're a kid and you're standing on the bottom and you just have one of those stupid blue mats there and you're looking up, I was too scared. It was the heights. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I opted out every time. Like, nope. Because to me, again, I'm getting away from the movie for a moment. One slip, my God, you're falling. But anyway,
I thankfully never had to deal with that bullshit. But yeah, no, I mean, I could understand obviously and everything being in front of people. I'm afraid of heights, so I can't even imagine being up a rope. But I didn't have to do that. But I just really liked that scene in particular. I thought that was, again, this movie was very charming up until it wasn't.
So yes, it was great to see, as you said, the pretend Chuck Norris be there for Barry, teach Barry, Barry those things, and which means Barry kind of always knew it within. So we get to the tournament, and they sign up, and you find out that there's 4 events, and they're trying to do a 3-person team, and just coincidentally, again, the teacher has been practicing kata, if I'm saying that correctly.
Sure.
For story reasons, I believe. Like, oh, this event just happens to be there in this 4 competition because it was brick breaking, weapons, the female kata, and then the freestyle fighting. And so they're like, yeah, we just want to compete because the whole point, which actually makes more sense, is they're just trying to get Barry's confidence up and like, let's just do this tournament. Whatever happens, happens. And that's what it should be in that moment, whether you want to lose. And so they didn't care. Like, yeah, we don't have 4th, but then they're told they can't compete. You need to have 4. And instantly they see Chuck Norris, and his fans and people talking, and she just casually goes over. It's like, hi, and like, can I talk to you a second? And I don't know how Chuck Norris is in real life. I'm not going to speak in real life. And he's just like, yeah, of course. And because he has a vendetta against Joe Piscopo's character, he's like, yeah, I'll join the team. Though I will admit the most hilarious thing is when they go to re-sign back up and he's just like, Chuck Norris, really? Just like looking at like, this is BS. And then Chuck Norris is there. But yeah, this tournament was just all over the place. There's no real rules. They're just like,
it's really, so bad. It's so boring. That's the best. Like, the worst thing is we've watched so many bad movies over the last few years, but just don't be boring. It just completely went off the rails. And I'm not saying it was like poorly done. It was just like, I didn't care about the tournament and I didn't care about how anything worked out in the tournament. And I thought everything was just done super cheesy. And I think it just kind of went in a different direction from where it was going. And it totally lost me. That's one of my biggest notes here from the movie. I actually have it written here in giant letters, a fucking karate championship on my notes, because why? Why was a karate championship put in this movie?
I wish I had the reason. And again, not to compare it with the reason why I worked in the Karate Kid is he was overcoming his bullies. Like this is a situation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of
So he
course.
like he got the win. You know, even though Miyagi, win or lose, you already won, and so. But there was something
Right.
more.
Exactly.
This was his way of overcoming, and he's like, even when he was injured in the leg thing, he's like, I can't look at. I need to compete. I need to do this for me. So,
Mhm.
but you're right. Going to sidekicks, it's like he wasn't even in the same competition at first against his
Mhm.
bully. His bully was doing the brick break, and he did weapons, which conveniently he dreamed of himself in in a mask and stuff. So when all of a sudden he got really good in the short
Right.
amount of time that he's trained with nunchucks, uh,
Oh, he got really good, by the way. Like I couldn't tell that was a stunt double at all in the distance
yes.
in that scene.
And then we get the fun little Chuck Norris, just being the shit out of the evil instructor. I don't know what else to call him, but you're right. It just didn't feel like Barry until the end. They were trying to, have him stand up to his bully and in
Mhm.
a brick breaking contest. And it just it didn't feel like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I hate to say he didn't really overcome his bullies because it just, he won the event. Great. But there was just
Right.
something missed. And I just think because the tournament wasn't all about Barry, and again going back to Daniel Russo, the tournament on movie reasons was about him. He didn't have this team
Mhm.
behind him. Maybe he had people in his corner, people cheering him, but in the end he had to do everything on his own.
Mhm.
You're right. It kind of just felt everywhere. It's like they had this great premise. They're like, we just need to get to this tournament. This is how we're going to throw Chuck Norris in, and people are just going to like it because it's Chuck Norris. Um,
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what they could have done to fix this without doing a tournament, because then they would be called a Karate Kid clone. You know what I mean? And even the brick breaking
Yeah.
again, I think a Karate Kid too with the ice breaking. So
Yeah.
I hate to keep going back. It's like come up with something a little more original.
It just felt like they had 2/3 of a movie and then they just didn't know what else to do, and so they just kind of leaned into this like mainstream karate thing. And I think there was a lot more to be explored with just him just dealing with his relationship with his dad, the grief, and then kind of going on his own after imagining the Chuck Norris adventures. And then the tournament just kind of became black and white bland bullshit that got like sort of added on. um and because I mean I enjoyed this. I enjoyed everything in this movie. I really did. I can say that. Even though that's why I'm surprised it's 26%. But man, the momentum just goes right off the rails with that fucking tournament. And like at the end of the movie, like he sees imaginary Chuck Norris again, and you're kind of like being played with as the audience, being like, is this real Chuck Norris or imaginary Chuck Norris? But like, where the fuck did Winnie go at the end? Like
Well,
at the end, it's just fucking Jonathan Brandis and his fucking everybody's like happy go lucky. I don't even see Winnie at the end of that shit.
because kind of like with the dad and the teacher, they build up that romance for nothing to happen. Because that's the one thing I remember. Because at first,
Sucks.
because in the beginning, she was trying to defend him, like don't pick on him. And then they had that kind of fight where he felt she was just pitying him, blah, 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 like didn't really want to be with him. And then all of a sudden, he's standing up for himself and she's like, oh, can I come with you to, I
Ah,
forget the zoo or where they're going. Like, yeah, just
yeah,
invite
yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
And then they don't obviously show that. Then all of a sudden she's at the tournament hugging the teacher and dad, but there's
No,
no, though that love
no.
interest is there and they built on it. So like this whole movie is basically this, Soto. They built up all these great chemistries. They built up all these great stories, and they're like, "Shit, where do we go? Because how can we properly end this? We can't fuck everything." Because that's basically what they did. Everything that they built towards, every love
God.
interest, they just did not have a proper ending to. But like you said, this is not the worst thing I've seen. I still, enjoyed it. I laughed, when Joe Piscopo got kicked in the face and spun around 6 times. So I counted it just for the fun of it. Like, wow, Chuck Norris
Oh,
hit him with so much force. Joe Piscopo spun in the air, full body,
oh, so
6 times.
bad.
But like you said,
Oh,
he was that comical slapstick character. and maybe he shouldn't have been, but that's what he played, and yeah. Uh, no, this
Dude, what
dude.
we always say on these on these podcasts, it's like if you make a promise, you have to follow through on it. If you say something's gonna if you set something up, and I can't even count how many movies in the 200 movie challenge that this happened to you, but it's like if you set up a premise, you've got to follow through on it. And if you let us down and you don't follow through on that promise, so it ends up being a bad movie. And then the feeling you get when you see the credits roll, you're like, I'm unsatisfied. And that's what this movie is.
Well, Soto, I think that's going to do it for us for this episode. I have nothing more to add.
Yep.
I know we looked at this because, unfortunately, like I said, Chuck Norris did pass. It's funny when I texted you, and I also texted my wife, you guys have the same response. Both
Did we
text
really?
back, we're like, impossible, not possible. Like, I think everyone was just in shock. Like, Chuck Norris can't die. But yes.
I've heard otherwise. I've heard it's impossible for him
But
but your wife and I have the same sense of humor, so it makes sense.
well, that will do it. Let us know if you actually listen this long, which no one listens. But if you hear this, just comment. We'll mention you. But anyhow, let us know what you liked about Sidekicks, if you liked it, what you didn't like, and let us know what your favorite memory of Chuck Norris might be. And to end this, just remember, Chuck Norris didn't die. He's just waiting for Barry to cue in the next fantasy scene.